Joining me now, a close friend and faith mentor of Charlie Kirk's. Frank Turick is a Christian author and the president of crossexamined.org. He was with Charlie on the horrific day of his assassination in Utah last week, and he joins me now to honor Charlie's legacy and talk about that terrible day. Frank, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Megan, first, let me thank you for going out to Phoenix yesterday. It meant so much to the team there that you would go all the way out there and be with them. It was
you're so
phenomenal.
sweet, Frank. It was an honor. It truly was an honor. And they gave me a shirt just like the one you're wearing now. Mm-hmm. And it was something to put it on. It does feel like it makes you feel a little closer to Charlie, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And I'm so tired, Megan, as I know you are, of the left calling Charlie Kirk a fascist. Megan, when was the last time you heard a fascist say, if you disagree, come to the front of the line, I'll give you the microphone?
Right on.
I mean, it's ridiculous. Fascists kill people. They don't hear out their opponents. The guy that pulled the trigger was the fascist.
Frank, can I ask you a question related to that? I think, I've been thinking a lot about this. I and many other people on the right have been talking, and I'm convinced that the reason Charlie was targeted, because there are many people in conservative media that say all the same things that Charlie said and fought for all the same things, but I'm convinced that the reason he was targeted is because the faith quotient was so high, which made him more powerful than everyone. Like, it's no accident he was elevated above us all in that way to where he attracted the attention in a way that has inspired the world, but also the negative attention.
Yeah, I agree. There is a certain amount of aura that came with Charlie in terms of not just his conservative politics, but the fact that he was sold out for Jesus. And that was really his focus. In fact, just a few weeks ago, Megan, he said, politics is peanuts compared to Jesus. Because without Jesus, look, all of us are going to check out of here in a few decades. What then, right? Politics is temporary. Jesus is eternal. And there's nothing more important than eternity. And so Charlie, while he loved politics, as I do, as I know you do, and realized it's very important to a functioning society to have the right laws in place, even from a Christian perspective, Megan, because I hear people saying, oh, Christians, you ought not get involved in politics. Since when are we supposed to allow the atheists to run the country? And if
that's how we got into this mess.
Yeah, exactly. And I always tell pastors who say, oh, I just talk about the Bible, I just preach the gospel, I don't get involved in politics. And I say to them, if you think the gospel is important, you better think politics are important, because politics affects your ability to preach and live the gospel. If you don't think so, go to some of the countries I've been to. I've been to Iran, I've been to Saudi Arabia, I've been to China. You can't have a church in Iran, not legally anyway. They can't listen to the Megyn Kelly podcast in Iran, not legally anyway. Why? Because politically they've ruled it out. So politics, while it's not our first calling as Christians, it's important because it protects our first calling, which is to go out and preach and live according to the principles that Jesus wanted us to live by.
How did you and Charlie become friends? I listened to your whole podcast the other day, and I was fascinated by the backstory, but tell us here.
Charlie happened to be in Washington State, of all places, probably in like 2020 or 2019. And for some reason, one of the TV shows that I do happened to be on public access up there in Seattle. And I don't know why, but it was. And he looked me up on the internet and he watched a lot of my videos, because I go to college campuses quite a bit as well. I co-wrote a book called I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. And so I go to colleges, high schools, and churches and present that. And I answer a lot of questions. And so Charlie was intrigued because that's what he was doing. And so my colleague just dug out the email that he wrote us back. It was January 18th, 2020, just before COVID. And he essentially said, hi, I've been watching all of Frank's videos. They've really helped me and helped me do what I do here at Turning Point USA. I'd like to meet. And from that point on, we were fast friends. And what was happening over this summer in particular, Megan, was he really took the college tour that was coming up here in the fall extremely seriously. And he's been studying all summer for this. And so he and I met on 4 occasions this summer. I'd fly to Phoenix and we'd spend 2 or 3 days. We'd go on these long walks. We'd sit in his office. We'd get in a conference room. Not just me, but other guys. Blake yesterday on the podcast was part of this. Danny Phillips, another researcher, was part of it. Of course, the great Mikey McCoy. What a hero the other day Mikey was. Let me tell you, Megan, that kid is amazing.
That's this young, fresh-faced kid who Charlie said, "Don't go to college." He met him just as he was going off to college. He said, "Don't go to college. Come with me. I'm your college."
Megan, Mikey McCoy was a hero on September 10th. If we have time, I'll tell you what he did. I mean, it's just amazing. In any event, it's not just me, but other people poured into Charlie. And the only thing that surpassed Charlie's intellect was his humility, Megan. You know, it's hard to be a mentor to somebody who's smarter than you. And Charlie is much smarter than me. But I knew a few things he didn't know. And so he would always want to get together and go through these hard questions that he was going to get from students, particularly when it related to the evidence for Christianity and issues in the Bible, that kind of thing. And so that's what we'd get together and do. And we'd go on long walks. He'd sit there, take notes. He'd speak into his phone. "Oh, that's a good insight. Let me take, And I learned a lot from him, just as much as he learned from me, I learned from him.
That was a brand new insight to me, because as good as Charlie was on these college campus appearances, it never dawned on me that he prepared. I don't know why it never dawned on me. I just thought he speaks for a few hours a day and he gives so many speeches. Maybe that's the prep. But no, he studied up for these things.
Oh, he studied big time and he was ready. I mean, he would have, he almost sounded like you, Megan, at one point. He was talking to one kid about illegal immigration, and he started citing the U.S. Code. U.S. Code 13. And I'm going, who is he, Megyn Kelly all of a sudden? How does he know all this stuff, right? Because he had studied it. He was ready for almost every possible question, every possible contingency. He was ready.
Yeah. He just yesterday, sitting at his desk in front of Charlie's microphone, he's still got the Glenn Beck golden microphone that Glenn got from Rush right now. And also there's 2 little toys there, because his daughter would give him 2 little toys and he would take them, and she liked to see them on the air. So he would always show these toys that she'd give him. There are 2 sitting there. And then there is a copy of the U.S. Constitution. And I said to his team, did he always have it at his desk? And they said, oh, he always had it on him. And some of those clips of him challenging people on their knowledge of the Constitution, whoever made the foolish mistake of asking Charlie if he understood the Constitution, learned the hard way that they had stepped on a rake.
Oh, yeah. And he had so much of it memorized, too. He said, no, that's Article 2. Article 2. You know this? Oh, yeah, he knows it. Yeah.
He loved it. Yeah. So just evidence of his preparation, his devotion to being great so that he could be heard and he could be compelling. The goal truly was to change people's minds, to actually, have them hear him past all the noise and all the nonsense that was already out there about Charlie, so they could connect and maybe listen and maybe possibly vote Trump or, rework their worldview that was being foisted on them in college.
The last walk we went on, Megan, was Monday night. So the terrible day was Wednesday. And so we spent some time Monday, and then we both went to dinner. He wanted to have dinner with the family, he's a family man. So he said, hey, can you come back at about 8? We'll go on a walk. I said, yeah, okay. So I came back down at 8 and I texted him. I said, okay, I'm about here. He said, coming out. And then a minute later, he said, shortly, Gigi just got up. So he was obviously taking care of the baby, taking care of his daughter, because that's the kind of person he was. And then we went on this long walk, and there were 2 major issues that kept coming up that he wanted to be better at. He wanted to be better at explaining the evidence for the resurrection of Jesus, because he and I always spoke that if you want to show that Christianity is true, you only need to establish 2 facts, Megan. If these 2 facts are true, then everything else falls into place. The first fact is God exists, and the second fact is Jesus rose from the dead. If God exists and Jesus rose from the dead, game over, Christianity's true. So we talked a lot about how, he said, I want to persuade kids. I want to show them, despite the skepticism they're being taught in college, I want to show them that the evidence for the resurrection is so good that they'd have to have more faith to not believe it than to believe it. And so we talked a lot about that. And then the second issue we spent a lot of time on is he really wanted America and young people in America to get back to marriage and family. Because I think you probably even covered this on your podcast at some point about that survey that came out maybe 2 weeks ago, Megan, where it looked at Trump voters, males and females, and Harris voters, males and females, and where they put marriage and family on their priority list. You remember that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the men who voted for Trump had marriage number one. I think the women who voted for Trump were about 5 or 6. But the women that voted for Harris, it was like 12 out of 13. Marriage is something they have no interest in. And he wanted to communicate to the world the beauty of marriage and the beauty of family. And of course, if you take care of the family, you take care of the country, because the immune system for the country is the biological 2-parent family. If you keep them together, everything else will take care of itself.
This is something I'm really wrestling with. I had this long section in we release this AM update podcast in the mornings now. It's only like 16 minutes long usually, and it's the headlines of the day for people who don't have 2 hours to listen to the show. And we had a section in there this morning that I then removed. I taped it, I voiced it, I wrote it, and I took it out. It was about this Daily Mail article that got into the disgusting porn habits of the shooter. Oh. And I wanted to put it in there because it's just it's so vile. I think this man needs to be exposed for just how awful he is and was. This isn't a crazy person. This is an evil person. And that's my belief. And I couldn't do it. At the end, I just said, it's so dark. I can't put this in a morning podcast where people haven't even had their coffee. They're sitting there driving to school with their kids and so on. So I took it out. And I'm not going to get into the details here, but the sum and substance of it is this kid was all over, this young man, pornography, and the most vile kinds of pornography that you can look at online. And it occurred to me, Frank, Tشارلي also constantly talked about the dangers of pornography and urged young men not to go there, while he urged them to get married, to even consider saving themselves for their wives, to have a family, to take care of their family, to be the breadwinner, to make the lives of their wives easy and as carefree financially as possible so that they could worry about other things. And it occurred to me that this man who shot Tشارلي was the living opposite of Tشارلي. Like one was a devil and one was an angel walking the earth at the same time with the most vastly different ideals and character, and just the incredible misfortune that their paths would line up, that Tشارلي would be in Utah where this man lived and trigger this sense of thinking so that he could steal him. And that leads me to my question to you as a man of faith, and as I am a woman of faith, but you know your Bible much better than I do. How could a loving God allow that devil to take this angel from us?
That is the hardest question to answer, Megan. But one thing we do know is that it doesn't mean that God doesn't care, because his own son, who was innocent, was put on a cross to save us from our own iniquities, because an infinitely just God can't allow any of us to go unpunished. Otherwise, he wouldn't be infinitely just. And look, we're all fallen. We all need a savior. None of us have lived the perfect life like Jesus has, but Jesus did live the perfect life, so he's our substitute. He takes the wrath of an infinitely just God upon himself, so you, me, and everyone else who's committed sins can be forgiven of those sins and also given the righteousness of God. That's why it's the greatest story ever told. In fact, kind of the shortest summary I've ever heard of reality, Megan, is this: God created it, we broke it, Jesus fixed it. God created it, we broke it, Jesus fixed it. We're all broken. Obviously, what this shooter did is horrific evil. But of course, we've all done evil ourselves, maybe not to that extent. I like to ask audiences, because I do this a lot on college campuses, they'll say, if there's a good God, why doesn't he stop all the evil in the world? And I normally say this: maybe because if he did, he might start with you and me, because we do evil every day. You ever notice when we complain about evil, we're always complaining about somebody else doing it? Hey, God, why don't you stop him? Why don't you stop her? We never say, God, why don't you stop me? And I ask audiences, I say, if God were to stop evil at midnight tonight, would you still be alive at 12:01? I wouldn't be, Megan. So although we can ask questions, why did God allow this to happen? We know that God can bring good from it, just like he brought good from the crucifixion of his own son. And sometimes we can't see the good, but there's always a ripple effect, Megan, always a ripple effect. We can see some of the ripples right now. Have you seen the nation begin to awake from its apathy regarding God, regarding Jesus, regarding love, and saying, this, we can't stand for this anymore. We have to do something. There's a spiritual awakening going on. And if you were to ask Charlie right now, would you give your life in order to awaken millions to the truth of what Jesus came to do, to save them for eternity? Would you do it? He would say, sign me up, because that was his mission anyway. Of course, he'd hate, obviously, to leave Éirika and those two beautiful kids, but he would know the ripple effect. He would say, I would give my life for this. That was what he was all about, Megan. He was Jesus number one. Everything else was secondary.
I know, it's true. I mean, I think when I listen to you, I think of a soldier. I think of, a Navy SEAL or a Ranger or a Green Beret, and they know the danger is immense before they jump out of this helicopter or go into this compound and storm, an ISIS-infected place. They know they might die. They're very aware that they might die, and they do it anyway because they're courageous, and there are some things greater than self that they're willing to sacrifice for. And I see Charlie that same way, because he knew this was dangerous. I mean, he knew this had grown dangerous beyond a point where I think the rest of us expect it to be.
You're right. In fact, about 6 months ago, something happened in the news where someone prominent, I can't remember the exact situation, but somebody prominent got shot. And so I texted him, I said, Charlie, I hope you've increased your security detail. And he said, I have. I know they want me dead. Now, I don't think he had a specific they in mind, Megan, but he knew that there was hostility. I mean, he got death threats all the time, and he knew there was hostility out there. And in fact, when we were driving into that event, this is the first event I've gone to a college campus with Charlie. He said, Frank, if you can come help me the first couple of days, could you stay an extra day and come with me to the first event? I said, of course. So we're driving in, Megan, and his team has drones up looking at the crowd from above, and they text him some video. And there's thousands of people there an hour before the start. And I said, Charlie, I don't like this place. There's too many buildings. And but he shrugged it off. He knew there were thousands of people there. And he knew in order to minister to people, you can't completely isolate yourself. It's just like love. You can't keep your heart in a box. You got to give it away. If you keep it in a box, you'll protect it. It won't get hurt, but you won't love anyone. And Charlie loved people. He wanted to go out and interact with them. He wanted them to bring whatever question or objection they had to him so he could try and persuade them to the truth. And he knew that meant risk. And
do you think he was scared at all? That morning, did he have any sort of a premonition?
No, Megan. He was. We got out of the car after we prayed, and so many people out there. There were all these kids from TPUSA lined up, and you take pictures with them. And then we're about to walk in. It was kind of an amphitheater, and you were walking in from the front of it, like right toward the crowd, and he's just going, "Welcome to the big leagues." It was like a Trump rally. Yeah. I mean, people were chanting USA, USA, and Charlie starts flipping hats, and I'm just standing there, with my phone going, this is amazing. And then somebody hands me hats. So I give my phone to Danny there, the guy that you had on the podcast yesterday, and he starts filming. And so I'm flipping hats,
Right. You're in on the action.
Yeah, it was just such a festive atmosphere.
We actually have a little tape of it, Frank. Let me show it in Stop 50.
Wow, look at that. Beautiful. Look at that. Just give him a little taste.
This is inside Charlie's car. Now he's out of it, throwing hats. Wow, huge crowd. It's really incredible, Frank, because I remember Charlie doing these events, and you get like a handful of people who would show up and see him. And it had grown, as Andrew's been saying, into tent revivals.
It has. He was kind of a cross between Billy Graham and Rush Limbaugh.
Yes.
You know?
Yes, that's perfect. Exactly right.
It was like people who, even if they weren't Christians, loved him. And even if people weren't conservatives, but they were Christians, loved him. Everybody on the secular and Christian right loved him.
Yep. And in the middle, I think, too. He had the middle.
Yeah,
He didn't have the left.
Yeah, no, but he was reaching out to the left. Can I say one other thing about this, Megan? I think the biggest mistake that our country is making and has made in quite a long time is for us to think that love means approval. Love does not mean approval. I mean, you know, you have kids, I have kids. If you approve of everything your kid wants to do, are you loving? No, of course not. If you approve of evil they want to do, you're not loving, you're enabling them. And in the passage that everybody reads at their wedding, but hardly anybody obeys, the first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 13, the great chapter on love, the Apostle Paul says, love always protects. Love does not rejoice in wrongdoing. Love rejoices in the truth. Love always perseveres. If you want to love someone, you have to tell them the truth, even if they don't like it. And love means seeking what's best for them according to the will of God. Not what they want to hear, but what they need to hear. In fact, as the great Thomas Sowell said, he said, when you want to help people, you tell them the truth. When you want to help yourself, you tell them what they want to hear. So true. And how often do we tell people, Megan, what they want to hear rather than what they need to hear? Because we don't want them mad at us, right? And so we say, okay, I'm with you. Whatever you want to do is fine. And we think that's love. That is not love. That is enablement. And I was just at a university just 2 nights ago because Charlie would want us to continue to go to these universities. And a young person got up and basically said, well, you don't agree with me, so you don't love me. And I'm like, you don't agree with me? I mean, disagreement is not hate. Disagreement is just, you have a different opinion about something than I have. Let's talk about it and work it out. And that's what Charlie was doing. And yet somebody who claimed he was a hater shot him in the neck. Who's the hater?
You were steps away in that tent when it happened. Did you know in the moment that it was a gunshot?
Yes. And I had worried about this, Megan, even long before this date. And I always said to myself, if I'm ever with Charlie and they take a shot at him, what am I going to do? Because I was in the Navy. In the Navy, you always, as all military, you always have emergency procedures. You think about stuff before it happens, and you decide before it happens. So you don't even have to think when it happens. So when I heard the shot, the first thing I thought was go to Charlie, but his security detail was right there, Megan. And so I took 2 steps toward Charlie. I was maybe 25 feet off his right elbow, sorry. And I started heading toward him, and then the security team was there. And so, okay, we got Charlie. So then I ducked thinking, okay, there's going to be more shots. And they went out one side behind the tent. I went out the other side and started running with them to the car. And we had this SUV lined up, the SUV we took in, the one you just saw in that film clip a couple minutes ago. And they got him on the right side of the car. They opened the back door and kind of drug him in, and I couldn't get in either door. So I popped the gate open and got in the back and climbed over the seat. And so his Justin was driving, Dan, his main security guy, had the GPS in the passenger seat. Rick, right to my left, was on the head side of Charlie. He was dragging him across the seat. And Brian was in to my right where the door was. And Charlie, as you know, Megan, 6'4", so too tall. We couldn't close the door. Just go, let's go. So we just started driving, and it's not an emergency vehicle. There's no sirens, there's no lights. We're just beeping the horn. And I don't know how Brian stayed in the car, because we're just yanking and banking trying to get to this hospital that's like a little over 4 miles away. And as we're heading there, maybe halfway there, there's an ambulance coming toward us, going toward the venue. And we're should we stop? No, just keep going. Just the doctor later said that was the right thing to do. And we're trying to stop the bleeding. And I said, we got to start CPR. I'm looking down at Charlie. I mean, he's a foot from me. His face is a foot from me. And his eyes are fixed, Megan. He's not looking at me. He's looking into eternity. He was already with Jesus. Absent from the body, present with the Lord, says the New Testament. And, but we had to start CPR anyway, so we did. I just started pounding on him, trying to get him to respond. Couldn't do it. Got to the hospital and just ran him right in through the emergency room, and they had a team there, and they started pounding on him and started putting blood in him, and they did get a pulse, but later the doctor said that's just because he was healthy. But the shot was catastrophic. Let me just put it that way. We couldn't have done anything.
He died instantly.
Yeah, first aid there. He was killed instantly. The only comfort is that he didn't experience any pain, according to the doctor. He was just taken out.
What did the doctor say when he came out?
That?
What did the doctor say when he came out?
Well, there was one doctor that basically said, okay, we have a pulse. So we're all praying out loud. We're like, come on, Lord, save it. Come on. Give us a sliver of hope here. And we're praying out loud in the car on the way there. And then they brought him into surgery. And about, I'd say a half hour later, the head surgeon came out and said he's dead. And that's when the great Mikey McCoy showed up. Actually, he was there just before that happened. And 23 years old. He's calling the vice president. He's calling Éirika. He's sending a plane to get Éirika. He's talking. He's asking the doctor real hard questions. He's shaking a little bit, but he knows what he needs to do. He said, Charlie would want me to do this. And he just took over. I couldn't be more proud of that man. Love that man. 23 years old.
Very impressive guy. We spent some time with him yesterday in the audience, got to meet him on the show. I've been wondering since last Wednesday, how are the guards? Do you know? They must be so shaken up.
Yeah, that whole day I just kept going and hugging them, saying, this is not your fault. I'm telling you, Megan, any one of those guys would have taken a bullet for Charlie. They loved him. They would have. And they're professionals. Most of them have military background or at law enforcement background. They would have died for Charlie like Jesus died for us. They would have done it. And, you know, I'd like to think I would have done it too, but I can't be the Apostle Peter and say, oh, Lord, I'll never deny you. And then I would, you know, I don't know. I'd like to think I'd have done the right thing if I had a chance to, but he was like a son to me, Megan. That's why I had to be in that car. Imagine you're God forbid, one of your children gets shot. You're not going to stay behind and, I'll see you at the hospital. No, I had to be in that car.
I know you had your phone on, and your son was hearing all of this too. So, I mean, he must have been traumatized just listening to it all.
Yeah, it was my son and daughter-in-law. I mean, he's 35 years old, and I was FaceTiming them because they love Charlie. And I was just, first I was FaceTiming my wife, and then I said, let me call Spencer. And so I started FaceTiming him.
During the event?
During the event, yeah, both during the event. And then when the shot rang out, I just, as I say, started heading toward the car, and I just put the phone in my back pocket. I didn't turn it off. I just, instinctively. And by the time I got to the hotel, I pulled it out. They were still there. So they heard the whole thing.
Do you know why the roofs of the buildings were not protected?
I wish I knew, Megan. I wish I knew. As I understand it, that was the university police's role.
That's my understanding too.
This is Butler, PA all over again, isn't it?
Yep.
Like what's
there does need to be a real investigation as to why they weren't patrolling that roof. The local PD or the campus police, whoever had the responsibility, but that's my understanding as well.
I hope Cash Patel and Dan Bongino and the folks, the local people in Utah will look into that, because somebody obviously dropped a really big ball there. And I mean, okay, make a mistake once, maybe twice. You guys haven't learned from this kind of thing? This was nationally news a year ago.
There's no excuse that it was a failure of imagination. You didn't need imagination. You had an example 14 months earlier. So, I mean, I really would love to hear answers from that team on what happened, like why. I'm going to guess understaffing, but we'll have to wait and see.
And the security team itself, Megan, they hated amphitheaters. Why? Because any shooter could be elevated above Charlie.
But Charlie couldn't get these huge crowds indoors, right? That's my understanding. Like the crowds were just too big. There was no room on these campuses adequate.
No room on the campus adequate. And also Charlie loved people so much that he wanted to attract people walking by. See, you don't get that indoors. So when you're out on the quad, just passerbys will get sucked into the conversation.
Because that's how it started. That's how it started back when he only had a handful, and grew by doing exactly that. Without divulging any confidences, have you spent time with Éirika? I confess I had the honor of spending some time with her yesterday, and I'll just say this, utterly amazed by her. Amazed by her.
Well, multiply that by 10 for me, because that Friday night speech, Megan, that may have been
Frank.
The most inspirational 30 minutes I've ever witnessed.
How did she do it? How is she that strong a person? Did you know that before this?
No, I didn't know it. I in my life, I've spent very little time with Éirika. I mean, Charlie introduced me a few times, hello, that kind of thing. The only time I spent with her was with other people the night of the murder. We were at that hospital for probably 6 or 7 hours after the murder. And I would say Éirika got there maybe 3 hours after the murder, something like that. And of course, she had to have a long talk with the surgeons, and then she had to go see Charlie and had to do a number of things. And when she was done with Charlie and we were about to head out, we were changing cities essentially. And of course, Mikey arranged it all. She came out into the hallway and I was just standing there. I was standing in scrubs for, well, you can imagine why I couldn't wear my clothes. And she saw me and just came up to me and she said, "He loved you and he was doing what he loved to do when he died." And we just hugged one another, and then...
She's comforting you.
Yeah, I know. I was like... And then she said something about making sure her husband's legacy continued. And
in the moment, she was cognizant of that.
In the moment, she had just seen Charlie dead. She comes downstairs. It's basically, let's go. And then they roped off the vehicle that we took out of there as a crime scene. I don't know why. It wasn't part of the crime scene, really. So we couldn't get into the vehicle until the FBI cleared it. And it happened that Charlie, in the back seat below him, between these two bucket seats, was my computer bag. So everything, I couldn't go anywhere. My wallet was in there. I wasn't going anywhere anyway, but I had to go in and get that out. And so when they finally cleared it, I got into the car and I pulled out my bag, and draped over my bag was Charlie's necklace that had a cross and medallions on it. And I had heard they were looking for that. And so cop was like, "Oh, we've been looking for that." I said, "I got it." So I just took
Frank,
it.
I don't understand this. I saw the necklace. Mm-hmm. Erica's wearing it. Mm-hmm. And it had a cross on it, and it had a St. Michael's medal. Mm-hmm. St. Michael. Mm-hmm. I mean, St. Michael, he's the one who's supposed to protect us in battle, defend us against the wickedness and snares of the devil. It's like, I don't get it. And I don't know why I'm putting it all on St. Michael as opposed to Jesus. And, he was wearing a cross. He was wearing a St. Michael medal. I just feel like if I went out in front of a crowd wearing a cross and a St. Michael's medal, I would feel next to invincible. And not only was he shot and killed, he was shot and killed around the neck, just exactly where the necklace was. I know what you said about, God sacrificed his own son, but I just feel like this doesn't make sense to me. I'm angry. I'm mad at God.
I get it. I certainly get it. And it's okay to be mad at God. Read the Psalms, right? Sometimes the Psalms are going, "Hey, God, we're doing okay down here. Where are you?" Right? And it's perfectly legitimate to question God. I mean, Job did. It's perfectly legitimate. God can take it. But just don't blaspheme God. Just don't say, "I'm no longer a believer." I just want to know God. I want to know why this happened. Now, when people ask me, why did this happen? I say, well, I know why it happened in general. We live in a fallen world. None of us are guaranteed 80, pain-free years, right? And if Christianity is true, people don't really die. They just change location. They go from this life to the next life, and it's up to God when that happens. Why did God allow Charlie to be killed? Why didn't our prayer in the car before protect him? Well, I don't know why, Megan, but I know why I don't know why. I'm inside of time. I hardly know any of the past, very little of the present. I know none of the future. But maybe God allowing this to happen is going to set forth a ripple that we talked about earlier that's going to bring many to Christ, that many people are going to come to Christ around the world. And I mean, sometimes pain does that. Sometimes you only look up when you're on your back. I don't know about you, but when everything's going really great for me, I tend to forget about God. And so pain and suffering can wake us up. As C.S. Lewis famously said, that pain is God's megaphone to arouse a morally deaf world. And a lot of times we're deaf. Notice that we're not deaf anymore. Notice that you and I are talking about eternal things right now. And hopefully people are interested in it now because of the example of one man and now the example of his wife who's going to rule the world, Megan. I mean, she's
a Khaleesi-like figure.
Oh, she's unbelievable. I just couldn't believe what she said the other day.
Yeah.
And so good is going to come from this. God can redeem evil. There's a passage in the second letter to the Corinthians where the Apostle Paul's talking about suffering, and he says this, Megan. He says, "Our light and momentary afflictions are achieving for us a greater weight of glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, for what is seen is temporary. We fix our eyes on what is unseen, for what is unseen is eternal." And there's a lot right now, Megan, going on that's eternal that we might not see. But a lot of people are coming into the kingdom now. I'm seeing it on my comments. I got people in Denmark going, I'm an atheist. I was an atheist. Now I'm a Christian because of Charlie Kirk. Same. People in Australia, people all over the world are waking up because of this tragedy. Did God want it to happen? No. Did God allow it to happen? Yes. And he can bring good from it, even good we can't see right now.
Do you think Charlie knows? You know, when I saw the announcement from Turning Point, 62,000 now, college and high school chapters applied for. They only had 2,000 total between college and high school 8 days ago. Now they another 62,000. And I just saw an article this morning in the paper talking about the number of trans-identified youth now in Gen Z at all-time highs. You know, this young, vulnerable population has been brainwashed into thinking that this is something they should mess with, their gender. It's so pernicious, it's evil. And I look at Gen Alpha, you know, they say born after 2006 is when we start Gen Alpha. And that's my kids. And I see it, Frank. They're not falling for this stuff. I think Gen Alpha is going to be the answer to Gen Z and what we've done to them and help hopefully set them straight. And I think they're part of, and that tail end of Gen Z are the ones who are applying for these applications at Turning Point. And my daughter said to me, as I said, oh, if Charlie could only see it. And she said, he can see it, Mom. What do you make of it, Frank?
Oh, I agree with you. I think there's a lot of rejoicing in heaven right now. I mean, Charlie's a martyr. And it's been said before that the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church, that this wakes us up. And let me also say that people like you and, of course, Charlie and others in the conservative world have spoken out clearly on the dangers of this gender ideology. And unfortunately, many pastors have not. And so let me commend you and Charlie and others to speak out about this issue. Why? Because we love people who are tempted to think this is the solution to their pain. It's not because we hate them, it's because we love them. Why is Charlie putting his life on the line, going to college campuses to talk about these things and offer these folks the microphone, if not for love, Megan? What other reason? He doesn't, it's not for money. He doesn't need money. He doesn't need notoriety. He has that. He's not getting any of the big three that cause us often to make bad decisions, sex, money, and power. He's not getting any of that. He's doing it because he loves them. And he loves these kids. And he's got a generation of kids coming up in his own family. And he wants a bright future for them. So we love people. That's why we tell them the truth. And so if there's people watching this podcast right now.
I told the audience this when it happened, but we went to an Episcopalian service about a year ago. I did. I'm Catholic, but I went to an Episcopalian service, and we walk right in. There was a female pastor, and the whole homily was about transing children, how we need to accept them, how they need to be encouraged. There's nothing wrong with it. I got up and walked out. I don't even know what this is. What are you saying? This is exactly the opposite of what God would want. To be told, yes, you are born in the wrong body. I made a mistake on you. You should start cutting off healthy body parts in a way that will damage your enjoyment of life and your wellness forever. What? It's madness.
It is, Megan. I mean, imagine if your daughter came to you and said, Mom, I'm a mermaid. Would you take her off the coast and drop her in the ocean? No, you'd say, honey, your mind is playing tricks on you. Let's get you some help, okay? You wouldn't affirm the delusion. If your daughter's struggling with anorexia, you wouldn't say, honey, you know what? I got to get you liposuction. You're absolutely right. You're overweight. You would say, no, dear, let me help you. Your mind is playing tricks on you. We have to get you some prayer. We have to get you some counseling. We have to get you maybe some medication. But I can't affirm something that's going to hurt you. That would not be loving. That would be enabling evil.
Charlie was super clear on all of that. We talked about that issue a lot behind closed doors and on the air. And unfortunately, he talked about it so much that he somehow got into the ear of Tyler Robinson. And, while the left wants to pretend that that had nothing to do with the motive, it's very obvious he was living with somebody who was, quote, transitioning, which is not possible, from male to female, had all this furry culture connection, which is very linked to the trans community. And that man stole Charlie Kirk from the world. What do you make about the death penalty and his shooter?
Well, can I say something about the shooter first? I hope the shooter repents and accepts Jesus, number one. And then I hope he's executed. Because I'm pro-life. I know you are. But pro-life doesn't mean that a guilty murderer should not be punished. It means an innocent baby should not be punished. In fact, capital punishment is given by God to the government to protect innocent people from evil. This is in Genesis chapter 9. It's in Romans chapter 13, where Paul says that God gives the ruler the sword for a reason. The sword is a reference to capital punishment, to protect innocent people from evil, to punish wrongdoers. And when Jesus was before Pontius Pilate at his trial, Jesus said to Pilate, or I should say Pilate said to Jesus, "Don't you know I have the authority to kill you?" And Jesus said, "You do, but you get that authority from above." In other words, God delegates to governments capital punishment in order to protect innocent people from evil and to demonstrate that life is so valuable that if you wantonly take a life, your life will be taken because of that crime.
Frank, I only have a short time left, but can you give us a thought? What should we be thinking about going into this weekend? Sunday Mass, Charlie, his funeral. Give us a thought going into the weekend.
We should be thinking about the fact that we all have evil on our hearts, and we all have to repent of our sins, and we all have to have Jesus take our sins from us and give us his righteousness, and pray for everybody involved that they would repent and accept the gift Christ provides for us.
Frank, Charlie was so wise in many ways, and to choose you as his mentor is obviously one of them. Thank you so much, Frank Turek. Everybody check him out. You tell the audience how to find you, because everybody's going to want to find you right now.
Yeah, crossexamine.org, crossexamine with a D on the end of it.org. Also a podcast called I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, the I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist podcast. And the YouTube channel is Cross-Examined, 2 words.
What a man you are. Thank you. Please come back.
Thank you, Megan, anytime. And blessings on what you're doing. Keep calling the truth out. Keep getting it out there, Megan. You're amazing at it. I got to say one more thing. I was talking to Charlie. I don't know if I mentioned this before. And I said, if there's one person in the public square I would never want to debate, it's Megyn Kelly. And he said, totally.
Oh, we'd have nothing to debate. We're on the same side on everything.
Well, I know, but if you took opposite positions, I would not want to debate you. You're so sharp. And I got to ask you a question from my wife. How are you de-aging? Okay. Is there some sort of Megyn Kelly?
You tell her. Okay. What? I do use Botox. I admit to it. And twice a year I get a Fraxel. It's this laser procedure that really, truly does work miracles. Not the true miracles, but good miracles. And it's like no downtime.
Fraxel.
It's not cheap, but it works.
Okay.
Fraxel, twice a year.
Fraxel. Well, you're amazing, and you ought to release the Megyn Kelly youth cream, the de-aging cream. All right.
I will text you as soon as I have it. Thanks, Frank.
God bless you. Thank you.
You too.